oh my gosh, I work so hard. I love being that busy.
She suffers from such a rare disorder of being unable to just be a human.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Candace Owens just went after Meghan Markle in a way that got people talking everywhere. And it all started because Meghan once again tried to show what she called her real, authentic side. Instead of winning everyone over, the appearance quickly turned into another heated debate online.
I think she's a malignant narcissist who is a truly terrible person.
Supporters felt she was opening up in a genuine way, while critics argued it looked like a carefully planned moment, designed to shape how the public sees her. Candace didn't hold back either, claiming the whole thing came across as more of a performance than an honest conversation. And plenty of other commentators echoed that opinion. According to those critics, this wasn't just a simple interview.
I just think she's crying for sympathy, playing the victim.
They believed every emotional moment, every pause, and every personal story seemed carefully presented to encourage sympathy and keep Meghan at the center of public attention. Others pushed back on that view, saying it's impossible to know someone's true intentions from a single interview alone.
And there's also no sympathy to be granted for this lifestyle that she's chosen to live.
Even so, the disagreement only made the conversation grow bigger, with social media filling up with people arguing over what they believed they had just watched. The controversy really took off after Meghan appeared on Jamie Kern-Lima's podcast, an episode that was promoted as something completely different from her previous interviews. Viewers were told they would see Meghan without the usual polish, without heavy preparation, and simply being herself. The message was clear. This would be the real Meghan, speaking openly about her life,
Well, according to their tax documents, they work 1 hour a week.
her emotions, and her experiences in a relaxed setting. That promise created huge expectations before the episode even aired, making people curious to see a side of her they felt they hadn't seen before. But once the interview was released, the reaction quickly became divided.
Make it end. Make it end. What is this?
Instead of everyone agreeing that they had witnessed an honest and vulnerable conversation, critics began questioning whether the emotional moments felt natural at all. Some claimed the tears and emotional expressions didn't seem convincing to them, arguing that the interview felt more staged than spontaneous. Others believed Meghan was simply sharing personal experiences in her own way, and that emotional reactions shouldn't automatically be dismissed. Before long, clips from the podcast were spreading across social media, with people breaking down every expression, every sentence, and every moment as the debate kept getting louder and louder. Candace Owens became one of the loudest voices criticizing Meghan Markle after the interview, raising a question that quickly spread across social media.
You're never going to convince anyone that you're authentic.
I'm searching for something to like about her, and it's so hard.
She repeatedly questioned whether Meghan can ever present herself in a way that critics would see as completely genuine, or whether every major public appearance ends up looking like a carefully planned performance. That argument became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the podcast, with supporters and critics debating the same issue from completely different perspectives.
It's too much for me. There's only small doses of that podcast I can consume.
Megan, how are you? How are you? I know you always make it about me.
When Meghan sat down for the now widely discussed podcast conversation, the episode was promoted as something refreshingly different from the interviews people had seen before. The audience was told there would be no polished television setup, no elaborate production, no makeup-focused presentation, and no strict script guiding every answer. The promise was simple. Viewers would finally meet the real Meghan, away from the constant headlines, public speculation, and carefully managed media appearances. That message created plenty of excitement before the episode even aired.
Everything they do seems so manipulative, calculated, PR motivated, money motivated.
With many people wondering if they were about to see a side of Meghan that had rarely been shown in public. But almost immediately after the interview began, Candace Owens made it clear she wasn't convinced by that idea at all. She argued that the appearance didn't feel spontaneous or unfiltered. In her view, the interview looked thoughtfully organized from beginning to end, with emotional moments that appeared carefully presented rather than completely natural.
Able to just be a human. I've never seen this sort of. I've never seen someone that struggles to just give us like one strip of authenticity.
Candace said she believed the image being shown to viewers was still part of a broader public narrative, instead of the completely open conversation that had been advertised. Her comments quickly circulated online, sparking thousands of reactions from people who either agreed with her assessment or strongly disagreed. Candace wasn't the only public figure sharing that opinion. Across social media, podcasts, opinion shows, and comment sections, countless people weighed in with their own interpretations. Some viewers said they believed Meghan was genuinely opening up about personal experiences and emotions, while others argued that several moments felt too polished to be entirely spontaneous. The debate grew larger with every clip that was shared as people replayed short segments, analyzed facial expressions, discussed her tone of voice, and questioned whether the relaxed presentation truly reflected an unscripted conversation.
You don't like her, it's not your fault. It's because she's extremely unlikable, okay? She has the the non-it factor.
Even the much-discussed no-makeup appearance became part of the debate, with critics wondering whether the natural look itself had been carefully planned to reinforce the interview's message. For Candace Owens, however, the discussion went beyond this single podcast appearance. She suggested that the bigger issue, from her perspective, wasn't one interview, but a broader pattern she believes has shaped Meghan's public image over time. Candace argued that she struggles to see what she considers a natural, everyday connection in Meghan's public appearances, believing they often come across as highly managed. Others reject that interpretation and see Meghan's style as simply a different way of communicating with the public, showing just how divided opinions remain whenever she makes a major appearance. This debate over authenticity has followed Meghan for years, and each new interview seems to bring those conversations back into the spotlight once again. Supporters continue to argue that she is unfairly scrutinized compared with other public figures.
It was breathy, it was awful. I listened to one episode. It was just scripted nonsense. It was like, what are you doing?
While critics maintain that questions about authenticity remain unresolved in their eyes. As the discussion continued to gain momentum, columnist Maureen Callahan added her own blunt perspective, further fueling an already intense public conversation that showed no signs of slowing down. The podcast was promoted as a major turning point, a chance for Meghan Markle to connect with the public in a way that felt more personal than ever before. The expectation was that viewers would see an honest conversation without the usual layers of media attention or carefully managed public appearances. For supporters, it was an opportunity to understand Meghan on a deeper level. For critics, however, it became another moment to examine every detail, and many walked away believing it reinforced their existing opinions rather than changing them. One of the most talked about moments came when Meghan appeared emotional while reading what she described as a letter written for her children. Her voice trembled, she paused several times, and she wiped away tears as she continued speaking. She also remarked that she was glad she wasn't wearing makeup because emotional moments like that could happen naturally. The scene quickly became one of the most widely shared clips from the interview, with people replaying it across social media and offering completely different interpretations of what they believed they had witnessed. Candace Owens was among those who questioned the moment's authenticity. She argued that the emotional scene didn't come across as spontaneous from her perspective. Instead, she suggested that the timing, the pacing, and even the comment about not wearing makeup made the sequence feel highly prepared rather than completely natural. Her reaction quickly gained attention, encouraging others to weigh in with their own opinions and creating another wave of debate around the interview. The online response grew almost immediately. Critics claimed the emotional display felt overly polished and carefully presented.
This makes her look greedy and shallow, and I think she's showing us exactly who she is and what her ultimate objective was all along.
With some describing the tears as unconvincing and referring to the moment as an example of what they believed was orchestrated vulnerability. Others strongly disagreed, arguing that it's impossible to determine someone's sincerity simply by watching a short video clip, and that emotional reactions can look different from person to person. As more clips circulated, the discussion only became louder, with every expression, pause, and sentence analyzed from countless different angles. Many commentators who were skeptical of the interview argued that the emotional segment seemed intended to highlight Meghan as a caring and devoted mother, suggesting it could encourage viewers to relate to her on a more personal level. Others saw the moment as a genuine reflection of family life and rejected the idea that it should automatically be a lub, viewed with suspicion. The sharply divided reactions became another example of how nearly every public appearance by Meghan now sparks intense debate. with supporters and critics often reaching completely different conclusions while looking at the very same moment. This isn't the first time Meghan Markle's emotional moments have been questioned by critics. Over the years, several commentators have argued that there is a recurring pattern in the way she shares personal struggles during interviews and public appearances. They believe those moments often become a central part of the conversation, while supporters argue she is simply speaking openly about difficult experiences. The difference in those viewpoints has kept the debate alive, with every new appearance bringing fresh discussion and renewed attention. Megyn Kelly has been one of the most outspoken commentators on this topic. She has repeatedly argued that Meghan's public image often emphasizes personal hardship, despite the extraordinary opportunities and visibility that come with her position. Kelly has suggested that this approach is intentional, framing it as part of a broader communication strategy, rather than something that happens by chance. Her comments have been widely shared, adding another influential voice to an already heated public conversation. Kelly has also been direct about her broader assessment of Meghan's public persona. In her view, the emotional stories, personal interviews, and discussions about public scrutiny are connected to a larger effort to shape how audiences see Meghan. Supporters strongly disagree with that interpretation, arguing that sharing personal experiences should not automatically be viewed as calculated. Even so, Kelly's remarks continue to generate headlines because they reflect a perspective that many critics have echoed over the years.
She is shameless and she is exhausting. You are not a successful female entrepreneur.
For Candace Owens, the podcast only strengthened arguments she has been making for quite some time. She suggested that the emotional moments shown during the interview did not change her opinion, but instead reinforced it. Rather than seeing a completely unfiltered conversation, Candace said she believed the interview continued a familiar pattern of carefully managed public appearances. In her view, the episode did little to convince skeptics who were already questioning Meghan's authenticity before the podcast was even released. One of the points Candace returns to again and again is what she sees as Meghan's ongoing effort to appear relatable to everyday people. Candace argues that many of Meghan's interviews, stories, and public appearances seem designed to create a stronger personal connection with audiences. However, she believes those efforts often have the opposite effect, with critics saying the messaging can sometimes feel overly polished instead of spontaneous. That difference between intention and public reaction has become one of the biggest themes in discussions surrounding Meghan's media appearances. Candace has also pointed to Meghan's personal story as another reason she believes the public remains divided. She argues that Meghan's journey, from her acting career to becoming one of the most recognizable figures in the world, is often presented as an extraordinary transformation that happened within a relatively short period of time. According to Candace, that remarkable story can make it harder for some people to relate to Meghan in the way her public image may be intended to encourage. Whether people agree or disagree with that assessment, the discussion continues to fuel debate every time Meghan steps back into the spotlight. For many critics, that dramatic rise from television actress to one of the world's most recognized public figures is difficult to relate to, and they argue that it contributes to ongoing questions about authenticity. They believe the speed and scale of that transformation make it harder to connect with Meghan's public image, while supporters see it as the story of someone whose life changed in extraordinary ways. That contrast in opinion has become one of the biggest reasons discussions about Meghan remain so divided every time she makes a public appearance. Candace Owens has even argued that Meghan's earlier acting career reflects the same issue she believes still exists today. According to Candace, the challenge was never simply about finding the right role or opportunity.
She just talks about just what a incredible work ethic she has.
Writing the newsletters and writing the social media captions. What's the photography that we want to do? And what do I want to wear for those shoots? And being a mom and a wife and a friend.
Work ethic must just be grueling, writing social media captions, deciding what she's going to wear, being a mom.
Instead, she has suggested that what she sees as a lack of authenticity has followed Meghan throughout different stages of her career. It's a point Candace has repeated more than once, saying she believes the questions surrounding Meghan today are connected to debates that existed long before royal life entered the picture. Columnist Maureen Callahan has voiced a similar perspective, although in her own style. She has argued that Meghan appears eager to build a strong emotional connection with the public and to be viewed as relatable and widely admired. In Callahan's opinion, however, those efforts have not produced the level of public support Meghan may have hoped for. Her remarks have become another frequently quoted part of the broader conversation, especially among commentators who remain skeptical of Meghan's public image. Callahan has also linked those challenges to Meghan's earlier career, suggesting the issues critics point to today did not suddenly appear after she entered the royal spotlight. Instead, she has argued that the same questions about public appeal and personal image can be traced back years before Meghan became an internationally recognized figure. Whether people agree with that conclusion or reject it entirely, it has added another layer to an already intense public debate. To critics like Candace and Callahan, many attempts to present a more relaxed and ordinary image, including casual outfits, informal interviews, and the much-discussed no-makeup podcast appearance, can end up feeling more like carefully planned branding than spontaneous moments. Supporters, on the other hand, argue that choosing a simpler presentation does not automatically mean it lacks sincerity. Even so, those different interpretations continue to spark arguments across social media, with every appearance generating fresh reactions and endless analysis. Another point that has fueled discussion is the number of different public roles Meghan has taken on over the years. She has been known as an actress, a member of the royal family, a podcast host, a businesswoman, and a lifestyle entrepreneur. Commentator Michael Knowles has described that combination of identities as confusing, arguing that the constant evolution of her public image makes it difficult for some audiences to understand exactly how she wants to be seen. That observation has become part of a wider discussion about branding, public expectations, and how high-profile figures reinvent themselves over time. Candace Owens has also focused on Meghan's image as someone balancing countless responsibilities, including business ventures, family life, charitable work, and public projects. Candace argues that this picture of being constantly busy and involved in many different roles is central to Meghan's public narrative. Whether audiences view that image as inspiring or carefully constructed remains a major point of disagreement, ensuring that nearly every new interview, project, or public appearance continues to generate headlines and passionate debate.
She said she was in the trenches when she was in the British royal family. Girl, you lived in a castle. Like, you got a princess title.
Meghan Markle has often spoken about how full her schedule can be, describing the many different responsibilities she balances throughout the week. She has discussed working on product launches connected to her lifestyle brand, preparing newsletters, planning social media content, reviewing creative projects, and contributing to her Netflix productions. Alongside those professional commitments, she has also spoken about being a devoted mother, maintaining close friendships, and managing family life. The overall picture she presents is one of someone juggling many different roles at once, while trying to keep everything moving forward. For supporters, that description reflects the reality of managing multiple businesses and creative projects under constant public attention. They argue that running high-profile ventures brings unique pressures that most people never have to deal with. Critics, however, see the situation very differently, and that difference in perspective has become another major point of disagreement whenever Meghan discusses her work or daily routine. Candace Owens has been one of the most vocal critics of those claims. She argues that descriptions of an extremely demanding schedule often fail to resonate with people who work long hours in more traditional jobs. According to Candace, many viewers compare Meghan's comments with the realities of everyday life and come away feeling that the challenges being described are difficult to relate to. Her criticism has been echoed by other commentators who believe the gap between Meghan's circumstances and the experiences of most families is simply too wide. Those critics also point to Meghan's access to significant resources, arguing that her circumstances are very different from those faced by the average person. From their perspective, discussions about the pressures of managing social media, branding decisions, or creative projects can sound disconnected from the financial and personal challenges many people encounter in their daily lives. Supporters disagree with that interpretation, arguing that public visibility and leadership responsibilities bring their own forms of pressure, regardless of someone's level of success. Even so, the contrast between those viewpoints continues to fuel heated conversations online. One comment that critics frequently revisit is Meghan's description of feeling like she had been in the trenches during her time as a working royal. That phrase attracted widespread attention, with many commentators questioning whether it accurately reflected life inside one of the world's most famous royal institutions. For critics like Candace, the wording became another example of what they saw as a disconnect between Meghan's public statements and how many people perceived her circumstances. The quote has continued to resurface whenever discussions about her public image return to the flag. Headlines. Another issue that has been raised involves reports discussing publicly available tax filings connected to the Archie Well Foundation. Some commentators have interpreted those records as suggesting that Meghan and Prince Harry devoted relatively limited weekly hours to foundation activities during certain reporting periods. Although the meaning of those filings has been debated and different observers have reached different conclusions. Even with those disagreements, the reports have become another topic frequently mentioned by critics when discussing Meghan's workload and public image. For Candace Owens, all of these issues connect to a broader argument she has made repeatedly. She believes Meghan's descriptions of hard work often fail to match what many ordinary people consider demanding daily life, and she argues that this gap contributes to ongoing questions about authenticity. Supporters continue to reject that assessment, saying public expectations of Meghan are unusually high and that her work should not be dismissed simply because it differs from more conventional careers. The disagreement remains one of the central reasons every new interview, project, or public appearance quickly turns into another round of passionate debate. Beyond the debates about personality, authenticity, and relatability, Candace Owens and several other commentators have also focused on Meghan Markle's business ventures and professional projects. They argue that while many of her announcements generate significant attention, the final results have not always lived up to the expectations that surrounded them. Supporters point out that launching new media and lifestyle businesses is challenging even for experienced entrepreneurs, but critics say the gap between the initial excitement and the eventual outcome has become a recurring theme that is difficult to ignore. One of the most frequently discussed examples is Meghan's reported multi-million-dollar podcast, agreement with Spotify, a deal widely reported to be worth around $20 million. At the time, the partnership was presented as a major step into the audio world, with expectations that it would produce original conversations and meaningful content for a global audience. The announcement generated enormous headlines, and many people expected it to become one of the platform's biggest celebrity collaborations. As the months passed, however, attention shifted from the size of the deal to questions about how much content would ultimately be produced. Candace Owens was among the critics who strongly questioned the outcome of the project. She argued that the podcast failed to deliver on the excitement created by the original announcement, and other commentators offered similarly critical reviews. Some described the series as overly polished or too focused on Meghan herself, while others believed it simply did not create the lasting impact many expected from such a high-profile partnership. Supporters, meanwhile, argued that creative projects should not be judged solely by online criticism, and pointed out that public reactions to celebrity productions are often sharply divided. Eventually, the partnership came to an end, and that development became another major talking point. Critics cited it as evidence that highly anticipated projects do not always translate into long-term success, while supporters noted that large media companies frequently end partnerships for a variety of business reasons. Even years later, the Spotify agreement continues to be referenced whenever discussions turn to Meghan's professional track record. Attention has also turned to Meghan's work with Netflix, including her lifestyle programming centered on cooking, entertaining, and home-inspired content. The series generated widespread curiosity before its release, but reviews from critics varied considerably. Some reviewers praised parts of the production, while others were far less impressed, arguing that the show struggled to connect with broader audiences. Online audience reactions were similarly mixed, creating another wave of debate over whether the project had achieved the impact many expected. Commentators such as Kinsey Schofield have pointed to these projects while questioning Meghan's reputation as a successful entrepreneur. Their argument is that repeated challenges across several high-profile ventures have made some people skeptical of the image presented in interviews and promotional campaigns. Others disagree, arguing that building businesses often involves setbacks and that even well-known entrepreneurs experience projects that fail to meet expectations. The disagreement has become another recurring feature of discussions surrounding Meghan's public career. The conversation has also expanded to include Meghan's lifestyle brand, which has evolved through different branding efforts, including American Riviera Orchard and later As Ever. Critics have questioned the rollout of those ventures, pointing to reports of limited product availability, delays, and customer frustration. Some commentators have gone further by using harsh labels to describe the business, while supporters reject those characterizations and argue that early-stage consumer brands often face logistical challenges during launch periods. Reports about product availability and customer experiences have continued to fuel discussion, adding yet another chapter to the ongoing debate over Meghan's business ventures and keeping critics and supporters locked in disagreement whenever a new project is announced. For critics such as Candace Owens and Meghan Kelly, the discussion goes beyond individual business projects or media appearances. They argue that the setbacks surrounding Meghan Markle's commercial ventures fit into a much broader narrative they have been discussing for years. In their view, the questions about branding, public image, and business decisions are all connected to what they believe were Meghan's motivations from the very beginning of her time in the public spotlight. Supporters strongly reject that interpretation, but it remains one of the central themes raised by several of her most vocal critics. Candace and Meghan Kelly have both suggested that Meghan's decision to marry into the royal family has often been portrayed by critics as being connected to status, opportunity, and long-term career ambitions. They argue that later business ventures are frequently cited by those critics as reinforcing that perspective. Others, however, see those claims as speculative and point out that motivations cannot be established as fact simply through public commentary. Even so, these competing viewpoints continue to fuel debate whenever Meghan launches a new project or gives another high-profile interview. Commentator Kinsey Schofield has also weighed in with her own observations, arguing that Meghan's growing involvement in promoting lifestyle products and commercial ventures differs significantly from the traditional public role that many people associate with members of the royal family. Schofield believes those choices have shaped public perceptions and influenced how some audiences interpret Meghan's long-term goals. Supporters respond that Meghan stepped away from official royal duties and is free to pursue private business opportunities like many other public figures. The disagreement reflects the wider divide that has followed nearly every stage of her post-royal career. Looking across projects such as the Spotify partnership, Netflix productions, and her lifestyle brand, critics like Candace argue they see a recurring pattern. From their perspective, ambitious announcements often generate enormous excitement before launch, but they believe the finished results have not consistently matched the expectations that were created. That conclusion has become a common talking point among skeptical commentators, while supporters argue that public expectations surrounding Meghan are unusually high and make every project subject to extraordinary levels of scrutiny. Either way, each new venture seems to reignite the same arguments all over again. The criticism following the podcast wasn't directed only at Meghan. Jamie Kern-Lima, who hosted the conversation, also became part of the debate after the episode was released. Many listeners began discussing not only Meghan's answers, but also Lima's interviewing style, with some commentators arguing that the host's approach influenced how the entire conversation was received. Before long, attention shifted toward both women, expanding the controversy well beyond the original interview itself. Several commentators whose views aligned with the criticism voiced by Candace Owens argued that Lima's style made the interview feel less like a challenging conversation and more like a supportive discussion. They believed that rather than asking probing, follow-up questions or pushing back on certain claims, the interview focused heavily on encouragement and praise. Others defended Lima's approach, pointing out that many podcast hosts intentionally create a relaxed atmosphere so guests feel comfortable sharing personal stories. That difference in expectations became another major source of disagreement after the episode aired. The strongest criticism centered on Lima's enthusiastic reactions throughout the interview. Some listeners described her responses as overly complimentary, saying they felt every story Meghan shared was met with admiration and repeated encouragement. Critics argued that this dynamic made the conversation feel less balanced and reduced opportunities for deeper questioning. Supporters, however, viewed the interview differently, seeing it as an intentionally positive conversation rather than a confrontational one. Regardless of which interpretation people accepted, the host's interviewing style quickly became almost as widely discussed as Meghan's own comments, adding another layer to an already intense public debate that continued spreading across social media and news coverage. According to critics, that dynamic erased any chance of a truly challenging conversation. Instead of asking tough questions or creating a balanced discussion, they felt the interview became an echo chamber. From their perspective, Jamie Kern-Lima appeared to support Meghan's narrative at nearly every turn, agreeing with her points rather than pushing back. For those viewers, that approach only strengthened the belief that the interview had been carefully managed to present a specific image instead of offering a completely spontaneous conversation. Many people online also pointed to moments where Lima's reactions seemed to match Meghan's emotions almost perfectly. Critics argued that this made the exchange feel overly polished and, to some, even uncomfortable to watch. They claimed that if the goal was to show an unfiltered side of Meghan, the interview style ended up having the opposite effect, making the conversation appear more controlled than natural. When Candace Owens sums up her opinion of Meghan Markle, her message is fairly consistent. She argues that Meghan struggles to come across as authentic in public appearances. In Candace's view, emotional stories, visible tears, and claims of openness often feel less like genuine moments and more like carefully presented scenes designed to shape public opinion. Candace isn't alone in that assessment. Many critics say they watch Meghan's emotional interviews and see a calculated public relations strategy rather than sincere vulnerability. Others completely disagree and believe she's simply sharing personal experiences in her own way. That divide has become a defining part of Meghan's public image, showing just how differently audiences can interpret the very same moment in today's celebrity culture. There's constant pressure on public figures to build and protect a polished image. But at the same time, audiences are looking for something that feels truly genuine. When those two ideas collide, and a carefully presented image is seen by some as inauthentic, the public reaction can be intense. That's exactly why Meghan Markle continues to spark so much debate, with supporters and critics often seeing the same moments in completely different ways. Some commentators argue that the harder someone tries to prove they're authentic, the more skeptical certain audiences become. That brings us to the biggest question of all. Can Meghan Markle eventually move past these ongoing questions about authenticity, or will this debate continue to follow her throughout her public life? And what would it take for critics like Candace Owens and the wider public to see her differently? Now it's your turn. Do you think Meghan can change public opinion, or has her image already been set in stone? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.